Hey everyone, today I'm creating 15 cards using Kendra's card challenge number 14. This has all the instructions to use 6 pieces of 6x6 pattern paper and turn it into 15 card designs. I am using Paper Rose paper today, and then I think most of my decorations are from 49 and Market. Basically, I'm just using leftovers that were available to create a whole series of different looking cards. So when I do this, I do go through a little bit of a process, and I'm sharing each step with you today so that if you've never tried this challenge before and you're a little bit uncertain, I promise you it is straightforward and you do not have to follow the instructions perfectly. If you get stuck, you can come back and have a break. That's what I tend to do if I kind of run into a bit of a roadblock. So here I'm sorting through some leftover 6x6 papers. These ones are from Paper Rose and they're from a bunch of different collections. Originally, I was trying to get them to match up to the Spellbinders ephemera that I have on the left there, because I took that out of a card kit, and I do have another video coming down the track where I'm trying to use the card kit without the ephemera because I use it like a bit of a crutch. So I'm trying to use everything else in the card kit without the ephemera. In the end, I ended up not using the Spellbinders ephemera for this project, but it did give me a really good starting point for running through and picking a colour combination. Now, these are from loads of different collections, but you can see I've got a couple of green, couple of pink, couple of black and grey. The next step is I'm going to lay them out on my desk to sort out which one is going to be A, B, C, D, E and F. And this is because when you cut them up, you will find that you might have all the pink on one card, all the green on another, all the black and grey on another, if you don't do a little bit of a look at this guide that Kendra has on the final page. So I'm lining them up and just trying to work out if there are cards that only have 2 pattern papers, then for those 2 colours, I want to make sure that they're 2 that will go together really well. The other tip that I have for you as well is I always put an extra sheet of paper beside me so that if when I'm designing the cards, I need a little bit of a top up, there's something that I know that will match ready to go. Because cutting down the papers is really straightforward, I haven't shown you all of that, but what I have done is laid out 15 white card bases, and when I chop the pieces down, I sit them on top of the appropriate card, and then when I've done all of these, I will just stack them all up, and then I'll work through one card at a time, identifying all the bits that I want to add to the card to complete it. That might be some ephemera, it might be some circles, I might need to sort out the sentiment or some banners, but I do all of this in stages. So this stage of chopping up all of the papers and adding them onto the card bases, so I've at least got the core pattern paper elements ready to go, is very straightforward. Now, when I was selecting the extras, I did dig around and find that I had these awesome things from 49 and Market. So you can mix and match different companies to have a really, really good colour match. So 49 and Market and Paper Rose is what I'm using today. Now, in terms of preparing the elements for each individual card, you can see I have them stacked at the top left-hand side of my screen, and I have a stash of black cardstock or leftover heavy paper, and I'm going to use those for my matting layers and to create the elements that will be required to complete each of the card designs. Now, when I run through this, I sometimes grab the matting layer and just put it with the card and then move on. And sometimes I actually complete the element like I'm doing here, which means that I'm adding on the adhesive, I'm laying it onto the black cardstock, and then I may or may not trim that down, ready for the card itself. It really depends on what I need to make sure I'm confident that I have all the elements for the card, because when I get to the next stage, which is where I glue them all together and complete the cards, I don't really want to be thinking about other elements to add. It's really just sit down and complete the cards, and I shouldn't have to make too many decisions. Now, with this one here, you can see I've got this little stash of spare shapes. So rectangles, circles, triangles, things that have been cut out with dies. And I've got them in this little box that is from when I got one of those silk pillows. It's a really heavy duty box, and they're perfect for storing extras in. So I have that one ready to go. Now for this card base, I did actually originally have a black base layer, but because I'm obviously doing the mats in black, I needed something else, so I just used one of those spare pieces that I had to the side to cut that element out so that that will be ready to go. For a few of the card designs, I actually lost my footage of putting the cards themselves together. I think it was card number 10 and card number 13. So when I get to those, I'll probably talk them through in a little bit more detail than I will the rest of these. Now, for this one here, it is literally just the triangles. This design, I was racking my brain about what I was going to do with it. But because there's a nice little section there on the left that you can basically put anything you want, just a sentiment, some kind of ephemera, and because I've got their little postage stamp, well, not postage stamp, the little washi sticker shapes, and then I've got the film strips, which actually I don't think I ended up using, and then I had some of the 49 and Market transfers, which are absolutely amazing. They're so gorgeous. I love them. All right, so now with this card number 3, for this one I actually struggled a little bit. So there was not enough of these little squares to cover the whole front of the card. I don't know if it's the way that I was laying them out or if with the card design I was not doing the right spacing, but you'll see here that I create a couple of the triangles and a couple of the squares, and I have those ready to go for when I compile the card. But I did have to create another sneaky square later on just so that I could make it all work out. But that design ended up being absolutely one of my favorites. For card number 4, this one is really, really simple to prep. It's just the backing layer, which I went all the way to the edge. In the card design itself, it did call for a 5.5 by 4.25 backing panel. So I don't often put it all the way to the edge, especially if I have something that's black. But for this one, I stayed true to the design, and that's what I prepped for the card. The other thing as well is because I'm using double-sided papers, I was able to just use the ones that were from the cutouts, and then if necessary I could flip them over and see if either side of the card, either side of the paper was better than the other. This one here, it's just literally the backing panel here, which is going to be actually a little bit more narrow. So you can see it has strips of the card base on the left and right rather than a 1/4 inch all the way around. This is not something that I would normally do with a card, so I'm going to file this one away for when I create cards without using a sketch, about, just putting a panel straight down the middle and leaving some of the white exposed. I think this is quite an unusual design, and I think it's one that I will probably use a little bit more of. For sketch number 6, this one actually just has these 1-inch strips that go all the way down the front. Actually, I think they're 3/4 inch. And it did work out that I actually had 5 of them, and I needed to add a couple of extras. Because I had some pieces of scrap on my desk from the previous project. In fact, I think this one is from one of my Call Me Crafty Owl card sketches. I think this is called Ocean Dance, this paper. It's absolutely gorgeous. I will put a link below. It matched in perfectly. It was just the right kind of tone for a lighter colour pink, and so that gave me 2 more strips so that that card was ready to go. I will put a link below to everything that I can find that I've used. I've used such a big eclectic mix today, especially with the pattern papers. So if I can't find anything, I will try and make a note that it's unavailable or retired. And for everything else, I'll put a link just in case they're useful to you. So this one is now card number 8, and this one's relatively straightforward because, again, I've just got the matting layer with the black and then the paper with the grey colour. And then these are the 2 little strips that create the banner at the top. I actually took just some normal sticky tape and I taped them together on the back so that when I cut the angle, they didn't fall apart on me, and then I could do the matting layer on top, and it was a design element that was pretty easy to create and ready to go. For this part here, I'm literally just using white, and then I'm chopping down the border so that this is ready to put on the card. But as I said before, sometimes during this step, I chop it down so it's ready, and sometimes I don't. It's really more about trying to make sure I have all the elements that I need for the card, because when I sit down and create it, I don't want to just have mess all over my desk. So most people may not do it this way with pulling everything together and then gluing, but for me, it just makes it so much easier. So for this card here, this is number 9, I'm actually doing this big white square, and I was a little bit worried about this square. It's a lot of space on a card to fill up, and there's only a little bit of pattern paper there on the left. But in the end, because I was using the transfer stickers, or the transfers, and then the little washi stickers, it all worked out just fine. So here you can see that I'm actually using a piece of backing paper or a backing panel where I have cut a circle out of the middle. Because the white is going straight over the top, you're never going to notice. And often I do that when I'm preparing elements for cards. I will chop them down to a useful size, just take one big chunk out of the middle and then wait for the right time where I'm putting a layer straight over the top so that you'll never see it. When I'm working through this step, I'm also taking a look to try and have a think about which of the card designs that I like that I'm probably going to use again. Every time I do Kendra's card challenge, there's always something super unique, and there's always a little card design or a few card designs that speak to me. Most of the time they are the ones where I can see myself using up loads of scraps. I do have a scrap box that I've shown before in videos that has long strips of 1¼ inch by 12 inch pattern papers. And then I have a bunch of them that are also 6 inches long. They're from a project many years ago where I had to cut paper down to a specific size, and that's what I had left. So anytime I come up with a sketch and see one like this one where I think that actually looks really usable and super cute, I think I could just grab more out of that stash and bulk make a few more cards. This sketch here is a really simple one to prep for. Most of it was already done with the pattern paper. There's just these little strips of black that will go down the edges. And because the circle designs kind of lay on top of that interest point straight through the middle, there is not too many elements that I need to prep. So this one is quite straightforward and will be shortly ready to go. For card number 12, this one has a few bits of black layering, but really just layering the two pieces that go at the top and the bottom, and in particular the banner at the bottom of the circle. And for these, I did kind of lay them out a little bit to make sure that they were going to line up and that the banners were the right length and would be hidden behind the circle that I had created. So when I lay this on top, you will see that I just try it out just to make sure that when I get to the next step, I'm not going to end up a little bit stuck. And I can see that that will line up just fine. And so all of those pieces will be put aside for card number 12. Card number 13 is one of the ones where I've lost my footage of actually putting the card together. And so I'll talk a little bit more about this one here. So it has the black matting layer at the back, and then I have matted everything else in black as well. And so partway through, I was kind of like, oh, this isn't going to work because it's black on black. So I've added an extra layer to create a little bit of interest. And then while I was creating those banners that go underneath the main rectangle of the card, I was thinking this just looks so plain. Like adding that amount of white onto the front of a card is just not something that I would normally do. So I had a spare piece of this pink, and then when I swapped it out, I was like, my gosh, that looks about 1,000,000 times better. So that is the one that you won't see later on. Here I'm prepping card number 14, and so with this one it's a little bit unusual. It's got the square with the circle cut out, and then you're intended to kind of line up these little scrap pieces underneath at an angle, and I think on the design they're shown as optional. So I spent a bit of time mucking around with this, trying to figure out what I was going to do, and you'll see later, I guess, the decisions that I've made in the end. There's one more to go with the preparation work, and this is a card design I can guarantee you I will use again. I'm always looking for card sketches where I don't have to do matting layers, and often I find without that definition around the edge of the paper, the cards just look, I don't know, not as finished. I'm not sure the best way to put it. But for some reason, maybe it's the layering and the fact that these are big pieces of paper and the fact that they contrast with each other. But that strip of paper, the big rectangle, and then the smaller piece, I'm definitely going to use that again. All right, we are now on to the compilation of card sketch number 1. If you are enjoying the video, then please hit the like button and maybe consider subscribing. That is how YouTube knows you're enjoying the video, and it will share it to more viewers, and in particular, more new viewers. So here I am just putting this one together. It is literally a matter of lining up these unusual shapes at each corner. And then once I've done that, I had decided not to use an oval shape as my decoration. I don't really have oval dies, although if I dug around, I could probably find some, but it's not really a look that I enjoy. So I went for a rectangle instead and just adjusted the card. And then this was the first time I started using these washi stickers from 49 and Market. And I'm not completely excited about what I created here. I think it was okay, and I didn't really put too much time into it. I was just trying to create a little cluster of decoration around the edge. I think to make it look better next time, what I should have done is put the decorations onto the white paper and then cut it down and then matted it, because I found every time I put something down that was hanging off the edge, I had to get my scissors, chop it, and kind of make it look like it was a bit of a collage. So it was a little messy, and I got better at using these elements as the cards went on. And you'll see here that I just ended up adding them so that it went all the way around the sentiment. So I do still like the card, but this one I would probably do differently next time if I was to recreate this design. I would come up with something onto that size of rectangle in advance and just putting stickers all over it. I don't know, like, let me know in the comments which ones you like the best. For me, I'm not so convinced about this one, even though, as I said, the card itself I think does look super cute in the end. This is also one of those ones where the edge, it goes all the way to the edge without a border. So let me know what you think about that. Okay, on to card number 2. This one is really quite simple. It just has 2 triangles, and then anything else that you want to do is absolutely your choice. So this is one of the things that I enjoy about Kendra's card challenge, is often there's only a few elements on the card, and then it gives you the freedom to just do whatever you like. This is why I always have ephemera, or here in this instance where I'm using the transfers. As long as I've got plenty of things that I can add interest to the card, then it's perfectly fine, and it absolutely works out really, really well. If you haven't used 49 and Market items before, I will put a link below to a video where I did some collage cards using 49 and Market, and they worked out brilliantly. They're all very different and very unique. Obviously the same color combination because they were from the same collection, but it was one of the first times that I tried to create some collage cards, which is not my natural go-to, but I really did enjoy it, and I plan on doing some more of them. So now that I have a sentiment down, I'm like, what on earth am I going to do now? Because it looks super, super boring. Never fear, in these packs of 6 sheets of transfers, there are really bright and really colourful elements to add. So in this instance, I've got butterflies, and they're always better when you add them in odd numbers. So you'll see me add 2 here to begin with. These 2 are the green ones. And then I was looking around thinking, where am I going to put a 3rd one? What kind of angle am I going to put it on? And in the end, I just popped it up in that top corner. Traditionally, I think there's a rule of 3rds or 3s or triangles. As long as you're doing them either in a bit of a cluster or spreading them out, they will come up looking gorgeous. This is the card that I spoke about before when I was saying I could not make this work. And in fact, I got so stuck that I stopped with this project, and then I left it all over my desk, and I came back the next day. I just kept trying to figure out, I don't know how I'm supposed to put these elements on here and have them line up. So I grabbed another couple of squares and I put a black matting layer on them from my emergency stash of matching paper. And then I just went, forget it. I'm sticking these onto here, and wherever they land, they land. And I am sure that with the extra couple of squares, I will have enough space. So you can see here, I'm deciding what gap I want. And then as long as I made sure the gap in between the squares was consistent, then I did not mind at all if I used more squares than was originally intended. I think the biggest struggle that I had was on the image there. You can see that you're supposed to put the green one like where it is, but then the other one is supposed to go all the way up into the corner, but it wouldn't work for me. So I don't know if I had my dimensions incorrect. That might be part of it. Maybe that base layer that I've got there is wrong. But you can see here, as soon as I got a couple of extra pieces, I was able to spread out the grey, green and pink. And then I was able to use the leftovers to do the corners. And this ended up being one of my favourite cards. I think that looks absolutely amazing. And after I looked at it and went, the black is really helping here, I decided to add a black matting layer, and that just draws the whole thing together really, really nicely. In fact, one of the people that I've started watching recently is Gina Kay. I haven't really watched very many of her videos in the past, but when she creates card designs, she often does a really thin layer of black to kind of highlight the edge of the layering of her cards. And this one reminds me a little bit of that, and I love it. I think I will do more of that for sure. On to card number 4. So for this one, I just started with the diagonal and I didn't really line it up. I just took a look that it's supposed to go kind of through the middle, kind of even, bit of a gap on the left and right. Then I've thrown a bunch of adhesive onto the card front, and then I'm just working my way through the pieces of pattern paper in the right order. Now you can see me flipping them backwards and forwards. I'm just trying to figure out what sides am I going to use. The trick is you don't want to put two that are exactly the same next to each other, because you're really wanting to show some kind of variation. And so I was able to actually have 4 of them that were actually different in the end. And that pink matches in, like it's a little bit different to the pink on the angle, but when I complete the card, it actually all comes together really nicely. In terms of embellishing this one, I was really not sure what to do for a sentiment. And on my desk, I did have quite a few circle elements. So I decided that maybe this is a way to use one of those spare sentiments that's left. And then I didn't need to deal with what was I going to do with the matting layer of the sentiment, because the sentiment is white. And so that can go straight onto this black matting layer here. And again, there's another card without a border. What do you think of that one? On to card number 5, and again, another card that has an oval as a sketch, and you will see me, an oval on the sketch, you will see me change this to be a rectangle. I don't know, do you love ovals? Maybe it's just me, but for some reason, I don't know if I find them old-fashioned or I have no clue. But for some reason, I like squares better. I really like circles, but I just avoid ovals. So you will really not see me use an oval element unless it comes out of an ephemera pack, and it was, I guess, provided to me that way. So this is the one where it has those white borders down the edge, and I just think that's a really, really cool tip. If you are creating a card and you want it to look a little bit more unusual, then instead of a border all the way around the edge, I love that look. This design element that I have put on top is leftover from a previous project where I had a few 1/4 inch strips, and I just decided to put them on some scrap white all in a line and then cut a border around the edge, and I put it in my kind of little stash of leftovers that's directly on my desk, and I thought this is going to work out fine. It's about the right size, and so I added it to that sort of bottle green. And then by the time I put this little flower onto it from the washi stickers, that just ties the colours in really nicely, and I've got a super cute thank you card. For card number 6, this is the one with all of the crazy strips, and these were a bit of a handful. I'm not sure if mine were not cut out perfectly or what I did completely wacky here, but I tried to leave a nice border around the edge, and then I was hopeful that when I lined them all up next to each other, they would be all straight and all perfect by the time I got to the other end, and they were not. So most of them were the same width, which was great. They lined up super nicely. But when I got to the end of this and I have glued all of these down, I absolutely ran out of space. So there was no border left. I didn't go off the edge, but there was no border. So rather than the card looking incredibly odd, what I decided to do was to cut this down and just cut basically all the way around the border so that I had a nice panel with even edges. And then I put it on top of a separate card base. So it's quite heavy, this front piece. It's like cardstock on top of cardstock, but it works out just fine. It ends up looking like the original design of the card. So I had to do a bit of, I guess, card surgery is the way that I would look at it, because there is no way I could have left it without a border all the way around. So for this one here, rather than just adding a sentiment, I have grabbed some of this transfer sheet. And the trick with this is always cut it out with the backing paper on it until you are ready to press it down into the element. So never sort of grab the sheet and then try and press it and hope that you're just going to hit the right pieces, because you will find everything else that's been exposed from the protective layer will stick to everything in sight. So this one ended up gorgeous. The transfer sheets, I love them. So that one's card 6. For card number 7, this one's kind of got a unique element on the front of it as well, where it's got the pink at the top and the pink at the bottom, and then just the white strip in the middle. I honestly, part of me is thinking for the white bits in the middle, I really should have thought about what I was going to put on them beforehand, before I put the cards together, because I found myself trying to work out, am I going to decorate it with some ephemera? Am I going to put a sentiment on it? Should I have picked some pattern paper for that piece? In the end, it always generally works out, but for this one here, adding the little tags to the left and to the right created those little side parts, which almost looks like you've got a strip behind it, to be honest, but it's just the little leftover pieces from when you cut down all of the elements from the original 6 pieces of paper. For this one, I then decided I would go again with the transfers. And so this really, really, really bright pink butterfly is the one I decided to go with. And I did a little bit of stamping on a few of these cards with this tiny little stamp that just says, "You're awesome," which is perfect for any occasion. You could use this for a birthday, for a thank you, even just for an encouragement card for someone. And so I've attached the butterfly, and then here I'm using some of the stitching. So you can see on the top right of my screen, one of the sheets in this transfer pack is cross stitches and messy stitching, and there's almost, it looks like sort of lace edging as well. So I've just done the little faux stitching elements with the transfers, and they just add a little bit more interest, and it fits perfectly onto those little pink pieces at the top and the bottom. And I'm really happy with this one. I really, really love card 7. Number 8, this one, there's not too many elements that are kind of left to go. So I'm just literally just adding the adhesive to add the paper to the front, and then put this little rectangle in the front, and then again that banner that I created using a couple of little tricks earlier. And then again, I'm back to these transfer sheets. They are so gorgeous. I truly, truly love them. I'm going to use them more frequently, I'm sure. I've put these gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous bright pink leaves on the front of this little rectangle. And then I'm pretty sure that with this one, maybe I stamp a sentiment. I honestly can't remember. I created these cards a little while ago, and it's taken me some time to pull together the voiceover, just because everything's a little bit hectic and I have not had a chance to edit and then pull the voiceover together. So yes, here we go with this one. I'm back to the little "You're awesome," and just stamp that at the bottom. And then, oh yeah, this is my other trick. If I ever want to clean my stamp off, I just stamp it underneath onto the card base, and then when I put these elements over the top, you'll never know. And then I don't have to find a little cloth or a rag or get everything else messy. So that's my cheats way. I normally edit that out and you don't see it, but with this one, the card base is right in the middle of the screen. So there you go. There is a tip if you're ever wanting to clean something and you've got a card base around where you're going to put something over the top. You can use the card base itself. So that is card number 8. For card number 9, this is the one with the big white square, and what better to do with a big white square than cover it in a transfer sheet. So this gorgeous little posy of flowers I transferred onto the middle of the square, and then added again the "You're awesome" stamp. And then this one came together really, really nicely. I honestly think transfer sheets in a crunch, they're the best. They're as good as having ephemera, honestly. I'm not great at layering things up, but they just, yeah, I really enjoyed creating these cards. And I do think the other reason why I love these cards so much is the colour combination. I am not a pink person, but this pink and green and grey just comes together so nicely that I can't help but think these ones are going to be super popular when my family and friends jump in and capture whatever cards take their fancy out of my stash. So this one here, I think I did. Yeah, this is another "You're awesome." So perfect for any occasion. This one is card number 9. For card number 10, I lost my footage. So here is the end result. It turned out absolutely gorgeous, and I will definitely create more of these ones. On to card number 11. So this is the one with all of the circles, and similar to one of the previous designs, it leaves 2 strips of white down the edges of the card. Again, something that I am going to embrace if I'm ever just creating cards without a sketch, because I do think it's just a totally different look and it's super easy to create. We don't have to create everything on 5 1/4 by 4 and then have a 1/4 inch border. And this was a really good reminder working with this sketch, because it literally just uses that front middle piece of the card. And so if you were ever trying to create something that was a little bit more narrow and you didn't want to create a slimline card or something in a different shape, then why not just use the middle of the card and leave the rest of it white? I think it works out absolutely gorgeous. Now, with these circles, they're not the exact size, I don't think, per the sketch, and I didn't put the extra ones up the top. I just did 3 circles, not 5. But I do have a pattern paper, and then I've got the plain black, and then I do have the happy birthday sentiment. So I would say this one is pretty true to the original design. I did consider adding a transfer, but I couldn't figure out where to put it, so I just went with a more plain look for that particular card. So for number 12, I'm digging into these transfers again, and it looks like I'm cutting out another flower that's going to go onto this circle, which is going to work out perfectly. Now, on the card sketch, you can see that the circle is quite huge, and I do think mine is specifically smaller than the card design. But I used what I had, and so because I had a white circle and then I had a black circle that gave me a nice thin border around the edge, I just went with it. It's big enough that it's going to allow those other elements to sit behind it, and it takes up enough space on the page. But if I had it bigger, I think it would probably be about 1/2 inch bigger, which would mean it'd be 1/4 inch on each side, and it would almost go out to the edge of that pink paper. So you can play with the dimensions here a little bit. Before you glue it down, just make sure you know how big your circle is, because the last thing that you want is the corners of those little strips to be like visible and sticking out of the edge. Now I'm back to this trusty little "you're awesome" and then cleaning it on my card again. I don't know if that's a really bad habit, but it seemed to work out just fine for me. And for this one that's got a bigger white border around it, I just made sure that my mess was in the middle of the card. So on to card 13. This one I missed my footage, I apologize, but here is the end result. I love how that one turned out as well. The pink paper on the back was the absolute best choice. For card number 14, putting this one together is really quite straightforward. A little bit fiddly trying to make sure that I got this panel lined up. I don't know why a big circle cut out of the middle makes it harder to line up, but I did feel like I didn't have all of the paper there to be able to line it up perfectly, and it took me a couple of tries. I then decided I'm not going to try and put the little pieces on a diagonal. I'm just going to embrace the circle in the middle and the border around it. The sketch seemed to have the circle be the same size as the gap, but I decided if I have the border, that will then match here where I've got the pink strip down the left. So a slight adjustment to the card design, and then I had a few of those little elements that were left over. For the circle in the middle, I'm back with these transfers again, which match absolutely perfectly with the papers that I'm using. And for this one here, there was just a softness to this pink and the kind of washed out look that matched really well with that green paper that goes around it. So I chopped a few of the bits off here where it went outside of the circle. And then after I attached that main piece, I then used the smaller pieces, and where there was some gaps around, I added them on just so I didn't waste anything. I then added a really small transfer sentiment. There is a sheet that has loads and loads of sentiments on it along the bottom, and then that completed this card. So this card is card number 14. What do you think of that one? I think it ended up absolutely perfect. On to card number 15, and then this is the one that I can guarantee you I will definitely be using this again. I don't think you need mats on these. I don't think you lose anything by not having them, which means for me, this is definitely a sketch that I'm going to use very, very frequently. So my favorites today are 3, 10, 14, 15. What about you? What are your favorites? I would love it if you could put a comment below. If you've always wanted to take on Kendra's card challenge and you're a little bit unsure, I have another video here where I've done a previous one and I've walked through the steps in a lot more detail, and it might give you the confidence to try it out. I do encourage you to give it a go. Have a great day.